Hey, what's going on, guys? I feel like I've been hit by 100 bullets, so tonight we're going to review 100 bullets. So before we get into tonight's read,
What a
Andy,
segue.
how you doing down there?
Doing pretty good. Great to see you guys.
What about you, Drew?
You know, this book was not great, and it makes me question anybody who really likes it a lot. John's Comments with Kids, I'm looking directly at you, brother. What the fuck? This is terrible.
As you can tell, this is when Drew gets fired up and a read sucks the life out of me somehow. It's going to be a really interesting episode, but we want to thank the chat for stopping by. We got Big Bad Ricky Markstadt, founder of the Discord server. What is going on, Ricky? We got Bad News Chris Barrett. The Cosmic King has returned, and probably the guy responsible for me being here. Like, literally, I think his phone call that I heard somehow and still fell asleep through. Anyway, Great Legend, thank you, man, for calling me, making sure I woke up for tonight's show. You were my second out of 4 alarms, and this is the only one that actually worked. So thank you, Legend. And that crummy, I have a beef with this guy, the Stream Elements robot. I'm over him. Like, he does nothing for me.
Not so loud.
2 weeks in a row, he's letting me down.
Not so loud,
We're going
bro.
to talk about Vertigo tonight. So I cannot wait to talk about the foundation of Vertigo. We got a top 10 list from CBR. We're going to go over to see if this thing actually checks out. And we're going to talk about why Vertigo isn't a thing anymore. But before all that, we got to talk about 100 bullets. So 100 bullets from Brian Azzarello and Eduardo Rizzo, and some awesome covers by Dave Johnson. Drew, you seem to have a beef with this book, so I'm going to let you take over.
Yeah. First of all, what's the premise of this book? Okay, the premise of this book is that these people who are down on their luck, kind of anthology style, it feels like, through the first 5 issues, because there's a 3-part story and then there's a 2-part story, and they're based around completely different characters. So this mysterious man comes up to these down on their luck individuals and offers them an attaché case. An attaché case that comes with all the information of who ruined their lives, a gun that's untraceable, and 100 bullets, along with carte blanche to do whatever you want with those 100 bullets with no repercussions. How do they afford to do this? I don't know. It's not explained in the first 5 issues. What is going on and what's the purpose of all this? I don't know. It's not explained in the first 5 issues. At least there's something in the overarching theme of this thing that bears more interest than the individual stories. But the first 3 issues are about Dizzy. Dizzy gets out of female's prison where she was female's criminals for a long time. And while she was being locked up, her husband and child were murdered by some vatos, what they say a lot in here. And then she finds out that they were coppers and not the rival gang, and she has the right to go shoot them. And we get 3 issues of drivel leading up to whatever happens, and a lot of cultural appropriation and old white man writing Mexican slang. We also then get a story of this man named Lee, who's a bartender and accused of child pornography. And we finally get some sort of answers as to what's going on with this bigger game is, but nothing more than that. So basically, you've seen at this point, if you've read the first volume, you've seen 2 different people go through this 100 bullets process, and that's about it. Yeah, Andy, what'd you think about it?
You could have chopped off the first 3 issues and it would have been a better start, in my opinion. The idea seems I'm very interested in the idea, but the way it played out in those first 3 issues, a lot of time was spent on a character that we're never going to revisit or never going to see again, is my understanding. And it just didn't cut to the point. It didn't get there. 3 issues, a lot of not much, and a lot of dialogue that was very grating to read, if you will.
Oh, John's upset he wasn't invited. You want to send John the link?
Oh yeah, John.
Yeah.
I want to hear what John has to say.
John, you want the link?
Invited.
The writing kind of brought me back to the 90s. When was 100 Bullets written? Because I felt like I was transported back to like 1996, 1997.
That's pretty much the time, yes.
Yeah, it was a simpler time when you could be straight up racist in your books and nobody said anything about it.
That was a little uncomfortable part reading that, but I liked the idea. And if they would have just cut right to Lee, the bartender, kept it to 2 issues, and then kept it 2 more issues, different character, then 2 more issues. I mean, I felt it would have flowed a lot better. I don't know.
I think that they did a lot to like kind of put a personal twist on like the concept, like to really make you try to care about these characters. I think the problem is just so clunkily written that there's really no way to enjoy it. I think that like you said, they wasted 3 issues in my opinion.
At least 1 for sure, to try to cut it down to 2 and then move on to Lee and then save another 2 for the end of the volume for another character. The idea is kind of neat though. A man kind of like X-Files style shows up out of the shadows with an attaché case, and like you said, 100 bullets, a bunch of money, and a weapon, and says you can have your revenge on anybody that did you wrong, and you're above the law, and you can do this, and then you have a choice to do it or not do it. And that was kind of a neat concept. I think they could have taken that and really ran with it and gone a lot further than what they did. But I feel like he spent a lot of time, like you said, on a couple of characters and just didn't get to it at the end, or didn't get to it fast enough, I guess. And those characters are gone. I mean, he's not going to revisit them, I would imagine.
She does get back in the car at the end of the thing, and he's like, "I've got plans for you." So, like, maybe in issue 40, she comes back. Who knows?
I don't know. I started to read volume 2 before we went live, and I just put it down.
God, why?
I mean, for me, I still enjoyed this for the most part. I always enjoy a good anthology style book, whether it be horror or like this mystery book here. That's the way I kind of interpret it. Is like it's going to be, an anthology style story where you get a chance to visit this one part of the story, and then the main thing is it's like, who is this guy? Who is this Graves guy? Why is he going around giving people 100 bullets with a gun? How is he this powerful? The fact that these bullets are untraceable and the people who are getting in trouble basically doing these things are getting off scot-free basically. So I think there's enough mystery there to make me want to keep reading. I might actually visit volume 2 just to see how. I'm just curious to see how the story is going to flow after the first volume, maybe, because I don't really have much more experience than that with this either. So just the fact that it's just kind of weird pacing. You get 3 issues for the first part of the anthology and then only 2 for the next part. I thought that was a bit weird. And then there's like this, I don't know if it popped up in the trade or the individual issues, but at the very end of trade 1, you get like the old lady story, which I don't know if either of you actually read that part of it.
That was not in the 5 issues that I read online.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah. So
believe it or not, you can't find this trade anywhere. It was printed like 3 times, and even the 3rd printing is like more expensive than a trade should be. As far as where I looked, and I pirated it because if you make your stuff hard to buy, I'm not going to buy it.
It is available on Comixology for those of you out there looking for it.
I don't pay for digital comics. I'm sorry. If I'm gonna read digitally, it's because I'm being forced to, and that is the fault of the publisher.
But I was actually gonna ask. But anyway, I didn't even talk about the last story, so I don't even know where or how this is printed, or if it was just an extra in the trade. But I almost thought that was like the most interesting of the 3 stories because it was like the most straight and to the point. But basically, it was an old lady who went to the cops and reported what she did, basically, like 3 years after the fact that she had done it. So basically, she got handed the 100 bullets. And it's a sweet old lady. She's probably like the nicest character you actually meet in this whole story. And she just goes up to the cops and she's just like, you know what? I think it was she had a son or a grandson that was basically brain damaged by another guy's actions. and basically she was given 100 bullets to kill that guy, and she felt so bad that she went to the cops about it years later, and the cops are just like, oh, sweet. They just think she's a crazy old lady, so they just send her on her way. Or is it just like, once again, is it this Agent Graves' powers in play, or is it the cops just being nice? Once again, I think that the mystery's still there. But my next question for you guys, I think you guys kind of answered it, but I figured, I'd give my input and ask you guys whether the first story or the second story was the stronger one. And for me, I think I enjoyed the first story just a bit better because maybe it had a little bit more room to breathe in the trade. It had that extra issue. And I don't know, for some reason I got to the second one. And that's when I kind of had to take my long break before revisiting the trade. I was reading it this afternoon, and I just completely, I just had to step away because I don't know, like I said, maybe it's because I'm tired today or what, but I had to leave it for a couple hours before I revisited the second part. So how was your guys' reading experience? Did you guys have trouble reading both stories together? Did you have a preference in those stories? What about you, Andy?
I liked the second one better. And then I liked the old lady story even better yet. Like, you could, in my opinion, I could have done without the first 3 episodes, and I could have started this whole journey with the story of, was it Lee, the bartender?
Yeah.
I could have started right there. Then you could have given me a full 2 issues of the old lady story, where that was more interesting, in my opinion. Her son was eating lead paint chips off the windowsill as a baby, and the building owner was told to clean it up and do something about it. And it was, made into law about protecting kids from lead paint. And he never did anything. And because he never did anything, the lady's husband left him because their son grew up handicapped and just left them alone. And she was stuck raising this child forever, and where she was given a chance for retribution, and she took it. And then 3 years later, she's turning herself in.
I don't know what this old lady story is. Is this like issue 6?
Well, anyway,
it's like a 2-page little thing.
In the honor of 100 bullets, he answered the call. We got John's Comics with Kids. Here to silence his critics, aka Drew.
Look, it sounds like the critics of the whole panel. Is there anybody that likes this?
Let me go ahead and answer your question before we let John have his moment in the sun to defend everything. Did I like the first part better or the second part? I sent you a message and I said, those first 3 issues, is that all we have to read? Because I did not want to read any more of this drivel. It was really, really fucking bad for 3 issues. Now, the second story, issues 4 and 5, that was pretty good. Pretty good. The art was still garbage, but it was pretty good. John?
Drew. You're hilarious, brother. Yeah, I'm honestly
good stuff, man. Sorry.
No, it's all right. I don't know if it's just Drew has an anti-Azzarello thing. He just doesn't like it. I don't it's fine. Hey, whatever. This is easily one of my all-time favorite front to back reads. So I don't even know where to dive in on this. My girls were watching Mulan, and I was like, "Hey, what's going on there? Hey, they're reading 100 bullets. Oh, cool. Let's see what they have to say." And I jump right in. It's just like
Mulan that bad.
Hot takes across the panel here.
Mulan is so bad you wanted to come on this show.
That movie sucks. I'm just telling you right now. How do you take a great movie with like wonderful characters, throw out all the really interesting characters, throw out all the decent songs, and then try to make a movie? Yeah. And then try to make it look like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Look, man, I went and saw New Mutants today, and I was surprisingly enthralled by it.
Hey, that's nice.
Yeah, so at least I liked some crap today.
See, JD, at least you needed JD on here. Apparently, he liked it. No, so I'm gonna take these off because I got gnarly reflections going here. Where to start? I love Dizzy Cordova. I think she's a phenomenal character. I could read, and she is. I heard somebody say she's not in this anymore. She is throughout the whole run. Dizzy is a huge part of this. And this little nugget that we get with her here is really just the onset of what's going on. And what I liked about it was, lots of things, but I think my favorite thing about it is the idea that it's not a redemption story. These are not like good people. These are definitely like it's very much in keeping with like Transmetropolitan and some other Vertigo titles of the time, where these are foul people, mostly top to bottom. I mean, Dizzy has some redemptive qualities, I would say, but like Shepard and Graves and Miss Dietrich, like these are foul people. And the people getting the cases are not our heroes. Like, we're not looking at them as like, oh, they should use this case and kill this person, or no, they shouldn't, because no matter what they pick, it's probably going to be the wrong decision. Routinely, this is an examination. Instead, in my opinion, one of the things I loved about it was the examination of revenge culture, because like America is like revenge obsessed. You know, like Mel Gibson made an entire living off of just like, hey, something bad happened to me, I'm going to kill the world now. Like, that's my life. Like Lethal Weapon, Braveheart, Passion of the Christ. Like, no, not Passion of the Christ, but like all of his other movies.
Braveheart,
that's
Braveheart set in the American Revolution. It was great,
right? It's like something bad happens to Mel Gibson and he destroys the world. And I think what is cool about 100 Bullets is it looks at it from the point of view of there's no winners in the revenge game. That you don't, nobody's clean when it comes to like revenge, because it's not these aren't waters where you're cleaning yourself and you're not cleansed after this, right? The history of violence kind of commentary, right? And I love that quality. This was never a comic I read. In fact, much like Game of Thrones or something, the characters you might fall in love with, don't get attached. Don't get attached. It's not a good way to be. What was more interesting for me was watching the ways in which the story's connected, the ways in which characters connected, because you might see a character. I mean, there's a storyline where they try to give a briefcase to a gas attendant, and he doesn't want it. He's like, no, I'm not going to use it. He doesn't even open it or look in it. He refuses. And then they end up leaving. And then, 30 issues later, you see that guy still walking around with the case, and like where his journey goes with him is kind of interesting. Now, is the art beautiful? No, this is not beauty. In fact, I remember it's
not functional. It's just
I disagree there, but like
we can get into that. I want to ask you a question though about the story before we get into the art, because I think that's probably a separate discussion altogether.
My trade only has 5 issues. Volume 1.
Did you read it in trade the first time?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so here's what I ask you: do you concede that there's really nothing that creates this as like a larger universe until the end of the second story? Like that's the only point where I felt any sort of hook to get me to buy the next issue was at the end of issue 5. Like, and I felt
would be willing to go further. I'd be willing to say that for me, it was almost the third trade when I started to feel like there was connective tissue.
Okay. Because
the
really moment that you get the reveal at the end of the second story is kind of like, oh, there's bigger bones here. But at that point, I was already like, there's no way. There's no way I'm down for another issue of this.
So do you guys?
I felt like what I had were some of the questions that Seawood had, as far as like, who are these guys? And I trusted enough that this was. I mean, at that point, it was on issue 50 or something, that it was going somewhere. And I just was kind of like, I want to know who this Graves guy is, who this Shepard guy is. I want to know why they're giving these guns out. And as the comic went on, I wanted to understand better what connects these characters. And for me, it was like second or third trade before they really started peeling back those layers. Until then, it was just an examination of revenge culture. And I thought that was interesting in its own right. And I dug each character's tragic down spiral was interesting to me. Watching Lee get taken apart by Miss Dietrich, I thought that was phenomenal. I was like, get this guy. That is awesome. And then watching Dizzy come to terms with this horrible situation with her kid, like that whole drama of her family and what happened to her, I found like fascinating and heartbreaking and beautiful and ugly. And none of it is designed for beauty. It's definitely designed for a literal graphic novel.
No, absolutely, and that's why I'm glad you're here to save today, John, because you kind of reaffirmed my suspicions on this book that like there is a long game going on here. Whereas like it's like right now, one of my favorite books out on the shelves now is Ice Cream Man. And it's an anthology style horror book where every single issue is a different story for the most part. But there's this character, the Ice Cream Man, basically, who is orchestrating everything that's going on. He's doing all these bad things with these bad people. I would say in terms of there's a lot worse overall continuity because the thing you care about the least in that book is the main character, basically, aka the Ice Cream. You just want to see him do terrible things and goofy things to people.
Well, isn't it done more like a creep show or
pretty much, yeah. But then there's like I think around issue 9 or 10 of that, they actually break off and try to explain the origin of the Ice Cream Man a little bit, and you're just like, all right, that's enough of that. Go back to the fun stuff now. Whereas in 100 Bullets, the stories are, well, so far my limited experience with the stories are a little bit more drawn out in the anthology style, but you actually care a lot more about like who is Agent Graves, what is his game, like why is he here, why is he almost offering these people a chance at vengeance. But you hit the nail right on the head. And even the forward in the tray, I think Jim Steranko did the forward for the book where he's talking about how there are no good people in this story. That's why I kind of appreciate that last story at the end of the trade with the old lady. And like, she is literally like the closest thing we have to a decent character in the entire thing. And even she has murdered somebody.
Yeah. And, you know, I think there's a line somewhere near the end when they've killed another character that you might've really loved. And somebody says, you know, they just had too much heart for this. And that's kind of the like reality is those characters that have too much heart aren't going to last, you know, and it's the Lannisters that seem to survive, right? Those Game of Thrones characters seem to get everything and doesn't mean they don't get it with a cost. They just, that's how life seems to work. And this has definitely got that same mentality. Now there are characters that you can enjoy that even though they are foul, there's a character named Lono that later on got his own spin-off comic. And he's foul. Like you could believe him rescuing a kid as much as eating somebody. Like he is that diverse and odd. But there are characters as like wild as that, and it's more watching because you just legitimately don't know what people are going to do next, and that's the excitement. You will never predict this. This is not going to be like some comic that you're just going to read casually and be like, oh yeah, I know that guy's going to save the day. And no, you do not know. You have no idea.
Nice. Before I want to talk about the art here in a second, but I need to go to the chat because it's been far too long since I had said hi to some people in here. We got Ruben Guzman. What is going on, Ruben? This guy's been stopping by about every week. So big thanks to Ruben for stopping by that chat. We still got Chris Barrett hanging out in the chat. William Bird, another guy who stops by about every week. Big thanks to William Bird for stopping by. He says, saw this trade secondhand bookshop Saturday. They also had Howard Chicken's Blackhawk comic, so I chose Blackhawk. So
good on you, William Bird. I've never read Blackhawk, but I'm pretty sure it's better than this.
We got my first subscriber, Fish Tropic. What is going on, Fish? He's talking about New Mutants and Tenant, which Tenant, I give a big thumbs up. It was confusing as hell.
New Mutants, I'm going to give it a big thumbs up.
This guy always got to steal my thunder somehow.
My thunder now.
This is what we experience every week, John. And then we got, JD, what is going on, man? He says the art was very Vertigo. I'll get into that here in a second.
Vote against Vertigo.
Flash Ray videos. What is going on, Flash Ray? He says, good evening, everyone. What is going on? And then Johnny 5 Alive. What is going on, Johnny 5? Legend's still hanging out. Once again, big thanks, Legend, for being my alarm for tonight. Apparently, like I said, unfortunately, I forgot to set 3 alarms. Once again, I apologize. But yeah, anyway, I want to get back to the art. I actually kind of really like the art from Eduardo Rizzo. In my opinion, it suits this story very well. Like I said, it's not supposed to be a beautiful story. We're not reading like Monstrous here or anything like that. This is gritty. It's street level art. It reminds me a lot of the Sin City Frank Miller stuff I've read. It's very gritty. I think that's the influence that Ed Rizzo's going for here. So Andy, you nodded your head yes. What did you think of the art? We know Drew didn't like it. We can stop.
I'll break down why it's terrible after you all tell me why you think it's good.
Go ahead, Andy.
Once again, I find myself in a position when I open up a book for the first time and recoiling like this is not my thing. But generally, by the time I finish that trade, what that artist has done has built a world for this story that I now expect it to be like that in the next trade. You know what I mean? Art is always in the eye of the beholder. So I find myself not really ever there's some stuff that I truly love, but I don't ever find myself ever hating anything because in the end of the day, when I read something or I'm delivered a trade like this or something else that I don't agree with the art technically, by the end, I find the key points or I come to realizations where okay, I get it. You're talking the nitty grittiness. You're talking like the Sin City vibe that this ends up kind of delivering. Okay, I get it, which makes me it adds points into that column for me, so to speak. Whereas there's a lot of art in like Sentient. Jeff Lemire wrote Sentient. I forget the artist who did that, but that art, I was same thing. I opened the book up. I'm like, oh man. By the end of that book, I was like, okay, this is the world that's delivering to me, and it makes sense now. For some reason, by the time I finish a read, that art tends to make more sense for me. So I never find myself. I don't know if that's a good thing. I'm very confused on what art I like now because every time I read more and more and more and I get delivered more great stuff from you guys and even some not so great stuff, it's broadening my horizon and my understanding of art and artists. And art literally is art. It's just one of those things where it's never, I don't know. How do you put this into words where it's so...
It's a very diplomatic way of saying that it sucked, Andy, and I'm willing to accept that.
Like I said, when I opened it up, I recoiled. I was like, "Oh man, I'm not gonna." The facial characteristics on the characters, I wasn't a big fan of. At the end of the day, that's the characters.
All these bitches got Wonkai. Every single bitch in this motherfucker got Wonkai.
Can I say one sentence before we let Drew take off here? And
I give you 3 sentences.
I'll ramble on if you don't stop me. So go ahead.
What I think you're trying to say, and what I appreciate of what we're trying to say is the reality that like art creates mood, and that the mood for a different story is going to require something different. So you have a monstrous, or you have a saga, or you have whatever, and what you want is consistency of vision so that the mood fits the story.
Look at Descender.
So like Descender gets a lot of crap for having this like watercolor art that some people can't stand, but it suits the art, it suits the story. What you don't want is uneven art, and that's why I shat all over Deceased issue #1, because that art is so uneven. That comic is like, it looks like a kid drew one page, a talented artist drew another page, somebody didn't look at either of those pages and wrote the one that goes in the middle. It's just like, who knows what's going on there. And for me, that's what I think you're trying to say, which means you don't have to love the art. You can say that it fits the story.
Yeah, it sets the mood and it sets the pace and it sets expectations as well, right?
Sure.
I'll leave it there then.
I completely agree that this is reminiscent of Frank Miller, but like Frank Miller now. And that's not a compliment. And the other artist that I could compare this to is Mike Mignola, right? And Mignola has this really cool way of utilizing shadow to tell stories. And this is like Frank Mignola without an understanding of what a light source is. There are too many deep blacks in this book on each and every panel that don't fucking belong there. It doesn't make any sense visually for the lighting to be the way that it is. And Eduardo Rizzo, I think he's the only credit I saw on the cover of these books. There might be another inker in here.
No, he does all of it as far as
he does all of his inks. He fucking shouldn't. He shouldn't. Like, he's not qualified.
There's a colorist, but I think he does all of it.
The inks are just wrong. It's just, there are so many shadows, and like there are so many times that somebody's silhouetted in the same panel on the same plane as somebody who's not, right? In the same lighting as somebody who's not. And it's like on every single page, I could pick out an incident of over inking, of overuse of shadow, of like, and there are some really visually striking panels where that shadow is actually well done, but that's very much the minority in this book. Very much the minority. I think that if he just did the line work and somebody else came in and inked it, I could forgive everything about it that I don't like. right? I could say, okay, well, this is consistent in tone throughout, and I think that it is. And I think that there's far less heavy shadow in the second story than there is in the first. There's also far less casual racism and stereotypes in the second story than there is in the first. And it's just Jesus, call us when we're live on the show, guys.
I think that was your
You're in
timer
the chat.
saying you ranted long enough.
No, that's Chad and Legend calling each other while we're live, and they're talking in the chat. It's for me, it was just like too many heavy darks where it wasn't necessary, and a lot of silhouette that didn't make any sense. Like some of them, it's really to define a foreground and a background, and I really get that. But if the characters are on the same plane, they should be in the same lighting, and that is a problem throughout this book. The inking is terrible.
I would argue, just on that one point alone, that you kind of missed the point, that it's definitely not about creating a realism and realistic light source. That is not what they were going for here.
Well, then stop drawing with a pencil and using a pen, because it is about creating a sense that this is a world, correct? Like if you're telling me a story,
No.
If it's a sci-fi story where they exist in different dimensions while they're talking to each other face to face, I buy that. But it's about Mexican people being terrible people for the first 3 issues of this book. And it's if you read Batman Damned and you enjoyed Ectory and the Demon as a cholo rapper, you might like this. But let me tell you something right now. You support cultural appropriation and damn near the most racist stereotyping of people that there possibly can be. If a person from the inner city of Hispanic origin read this book, they'd be like, wait a second, what the fuck are they trying to say? It's like he speaks in like old white man, but then throws like Vato in there, and it doesn't read well. It's just really awkward and terrible. And I think that eventually a comic book fan from the inner city is going to end up popping a cap in Azzarello for being a racist.
One thing I did kind of enjoy in the first story, though, is just the amount of Chicago that Brian Azzarello threw in there. I just remember, like, when she's on that train stop, and he's like, Clark and Lake is next. I'm like, we rode that train at C2E2. Right. Drew, do you remember that train? That was the same one.
I remember that train. I don't remember as many Vatos on that train, but
so I don't know how to attack any of those points because they were quite incoherent, but I'll do my best.
Yeah, my points were incoherent. The dialogue in this book wasn't.
No. So what I would say is what I do on your point, Seawood, what I do love is that like this comic moves around constantly, city to city, state to state, and you get a real kind of like fun flavor of that place each time they do, where you can see that they've really looked at the architecture in that place and they've looked at the layout of the city, and you get a fun, just like I said, a flavor of it. And I think that's kind of cool. I don't know how to deal with the racism side. Is that implying that like Boys in the Hood is racist? Because it's like
no, Boys in the Hood is not racist because Boys in the Hood is authentic. I think the difference is there's no authenticity to the lexicon that he tries to use, because I've never heard anybody talk this way.
Oh, I have. High school kids in the 90s used to do this all the time.
Yeah, white high school kids would talk that way.
That's right. It made me feel kind of uncomfortable the way it was written.
Right. It's basically what white people think that Mexican kids in the city talk like. And that's not what Mexican kids in the city talk like. It's just not. Right? Like you would go down there and you talk like that and somebody would pull a gun on you. Like that's the way, like the lexicon is completely off.
Maybe we're reading too far into this, but
I'm not, because I couldn't understand it, because he kind of, it's like he talks in like proper English and then throws these slang terms in. And he's like, this is what the kids are saying, right? No, dude, it's not what the kids are saying.
I don't know how to go there, but like, I also would argue that like every city uses slang in their own way, and just because it's not familiar to you in Baltimore doesn't necessarily mean that in 2099, whatever, that it wasn't closer to accurate in that place. Maybe 20 years later in a completely different city, you would view it as something or other. I don't know.
To me, it rings of inauthentic, and I don't think it nails
But
it at all. I think it's really
let's
bad.
talk about the art as far as the lighting and the way they use shadow. I think this is a noir story. This is noir style. I dig it. It's not, you can argue there's a little Sin City in there for sure. But for me, like, I dig the heavy shadows. I dig that characters are just randomly silhouetted, like as if they were hit with a neon light and bleached out, and the person behind them you could see, but they couldn't. Like, I just dig that intensity of it. For me, it just feels really, I don't want to say raw, because that doesn't seem like the right word, but just it feels.
I think raw is the right word, but I think it's for the wrong reason.
It feels really as if we have no control over what we get to see. Like the sometimes there's a facial expression and all you're getting is two eyes and a mouth. Sometimes you want to see somebody's reaction, but instead you're seeing the wall behind them. I think there's a lot of that, like, things hidden that we don't quite understand and can't see all of. And I like the way it's laid out that way.
For me, it really felt kind of loungy, cigarette smoke,
right?
Saxophone, kind of dark, loungy, and I was really kind of digging that vibe when I let that kind of sink into my brain and let it kind of melt over and try to really let go of my expectations and kind of let the story pull me in. So it was a little bit of Sin City and a little bit of Brubaker kind of feeling, like Criminal kind of feeling, a little bit of Sin City, and then kind of just sat back and realized it's like, oh man, I'm kind of sitting back in that leather booth in the back far corner watching this play out in the shadows with cigarette smoke around me, holding a drink. And I'm like, it's kind of, the more we talk about it, the more I think about it, it really did pull me in more than I'm giving it credit for.
I'm trying to figure out what year we were talking about this being published. I
think it was 1999. I pulled out the trade, and definitely the artwork is dated 99 on the front cover.
99, 2000. So there you go. Yeah. So here's a panel that's like, she's pouring drugs on this guy, and his face has nothing. You just get his eyes.
Why is his shirt not in shadow?
I freaking love that. I dig it.
It's
man.
terrible.
It's like, cool.
If you want to do that, that's cool. Make his shirt black. Make the chain.
All right, go ahead. Keep talking about it, John.
Okay, what I like is it for me. It's like reducing him to just a color, because at this point in the story, she has found out all the secrets he's kept from her, and for her, this guy just doesn't exist anymore. He's just an empty shirt, and I dig that they're willing to go.
Now,
to
can we talk about the next panel where she's reduced to him not wanting to draw her face, so he throws a random shadow over it? That happens more than a dozen.
I dig it, man. I like the style of it. I mean, here's another one where she's walking away. She's walking away in the rain, and you can't see her, but you can see all of him. They're both getting rained on, but for whatever reason, you can't see her.
Kind of to me, that's Sin City all day right there.
I love it. I love it, man.
I think it's a good thing. Yeah.
I love it.
It delivered more story-wise. The art was delivering more story-wise there, where their paths were diverging from each other in the story, where their story together was completely ending or coming to an end. It was in progress. That's where I felt that was taking place, where especially when he colored his whole face, like blacked it out. It's like, oh, she's going to kill him. She's really going to kill him. That's where I was leading.
Well, it's just like an old Bogart movie where like the lighting is like the music. All right. It's letting you know when somebody has a secret or when somebody's lying. Like there's no reason why she should have a shadow across the middle of her face, but I freaking dig it. Like right here.
The lighting is the music. This is mumble rap.
You're crazy. The lighting creates the mood. The art creates the mood.
And it ruined the mood for the first 3 issues of the story. It ruined the mood for me.
You can't have music in a comic book, but you can do it with cinematography, or in this case, the way they draw shadow and light. Like it for me, I dig it.
I agree, and I agree I agree that that's a big part of letting the art set and create the mood. I think that inking allows you to express more with form and mood than any other part of the comic book creation process. I see exactly what you're saying about that. And what I'm telling you is that when I read this, the mood that's created is that the artist is not good enough to draw this book. It conveys a dark mood, but it doesn't convey the story in the way that it should. I think that it's a detractor for me more than anything. It's over inked to the point where it just it made me not want to read the 2 issues of this 5-issue arc that were enjoyable.
All right, we get it. You don't like it, but let's get to what the chat thinks because we're missing some good comments here. I will go to JD first because
Sorry, I was clicking on.
Oh, no,
sorry.
no,
I'm in here as the comic core.
I think the art reflects the complexity of the story. Trust me, it works. The more you read it, the dialogue urges you to understand the times and effects. It's 20 years ago and very appropriate. We've also got Carlito Classico. What's going on? He had an interesting comment earlier. He actually said, being as a former Chicago and growing up around Latinos, it makes him want to read this more. But then we had Samuel David agreeing with Drew's points. So he read it and he pretty much agrees with you, Drew. And then I think Chris Barrett.
No need for further IQ testing. Samuel David is a genius.
There are image titles recently gunning for hits that had soundtrack to listen to each issue as well. And then Bub's Comics, what's going on is Andy in the tanning bed. That UV light is killer, bro. So he likes your lighting, man. And then we've got Ricky Marks. He says, put the right color and lighting toward a story, and you get a good one, of course. So I just actually pulled out I forgot I had both the trade, and then I remember I probably read this in 2008. I think I liked it so much, which, by the way, I did get signed, of course, by Brian Azzarello. I actually did upgrade to the hardcover. And I also have this print I got at Wizard World, signed by all three of the creators at the bottom there. So
okay, that's pretty good.
That actually looks properly inked. So
yeah,
Carson, hold that up, man.
Yeah,
hold that up again.
This is I think I can't remember what year this came. Probably would have had to be 2010, 2011. I got this because I think the Batman Flashpoint was out, and then I got the. They were just giving these away for free during their signing. So
wow.
I got a chance to meet the whole creative team. So that was pretty cool. So
this is what I love about this show, and this is what I love about you guys pulling me into stuff that I probably would never buy on the shelf. Is the polarizing topics, polarizing ideas makes for amazing discussion and amazing topics, in my opinion. This is why I really love being a part of this and doing this. And Drew froze for a minute there.
No, I had to refresh my camera.
I really enjoy this because at the end of the day, nobody has to agree, and we can agree to disagree, and we can banter back and forth, and that's what I love.
Yeah, we've bantered on for almost 40 minutes now. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to say hi to our friend Donnie, the Mastodon. He says he's going to his local library to give it another chance. So how's it going, Mastodon? And then we just had Chaos and Comics hop in the chat. What is it going on, Chaos? Nice to see you out tonight.
Yeah, I will say this is the perfect library get. You don't need to go. This has been out long enough. A library should have it.
Oh, somebody lost some audio there. But anyway, I think it's about that time of show, and I'm guessing we're gonna have two ends of the spectrum here. Well, it's time to give our scores. So, Drew, I'm just gonna let you go first. This is your chance. Get it all out of your system, buddy. Go ahead.
This book has what is an interesting concept that is completely underdeveloped in the first 5 issues. The first 3 issues were incredibly wasted with stilted dialogue that is misusing a lexicon that is culturally not a part of Brian Azzarello's own culture, which you probably shouldn't be appropriating, but it was 20 years ago. We'll give him a pass on that. The art is has some really adept line work that is just drowned out by an overuse of shadow and a clunky attempt to channel Frank Miller's Sin City, and it just falls on its ass in the attempt at doing so. The first 3 issues of this book are a no grade, fucking terrible. The last 2 issues of the first trade redeem it a little bit. This is a 3.0. It's a 3.0. This is the worst book that I have read on Modern Men.
Wow, worse than Dark Empire?
Worse than Dark Empire by far. There were characters in Dark Empire that were fully realized and developed and not racist. So
this can't be worse than Red Goblin.
I don't remember rating Red Goblin, but I enjoyed Red Goblin. Red Goblin's a good Spider-Man story. Come on, man. There's you know what's in Red Goblin that's interesting? The Red Goblin. You know it's not in this book? The fucking Red Goblin. Come on, man. Do the math.
Go ahead.
3.0.
All right. I'm going to just cut right to the chase, and I'm going to go with probably a 7.0. And I think only reading volume 1 of this book actually does the story a disservice. I feel like they could have spent a little more time and thought and energy into the way they had the first volume flow, right? The way they delivered it. I think it would have flowed a little bit better as two issue. They were really trying to drive the nail home with Dizzy, like John was saying. I had no idea Dizzy was going to be a returning character after volume 1. And I think that kind of hurts the story if you just read volume 1 and stop there. I think I'm going to land on 7-0 with this, but I guarantee you if I read volume 3, 4, 5, and 6 and continue on, that grade's going to go way up from there, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with some of Drew's points, and I agree with some of John's points, and I'm always stuck in the middle. And I'm kind of a very agreeable person because I just get torn not having a massive history with comic books and with artists and writers that I don't find myself landing in one lane or another, and I just kind of find myself weaving back and forth between what other people like, and I almost wonder if I'm never going to find something that I like because I always tend to find the better parts in what something's being delivered, and I kind of grasp onto those. Even if there's not a lot of them, I take it and I run with it. So I'm 7.
All right, John, this is your chance. We usually give it a CGC style grade to put it in perspective of these numbers. So usually, you can give it a 9.6, 9.8, which a lot of the stuff we review is usually in the 9s, but there's a lot of salt tonight. So, John, I'm going to let you redeem this a little bit.
I don't know if you saw Biggie Shack's video, but I'm top 3 saltiest YouTubers, so I'm usually the one of the saltiest around. You better be ready.
No.
I agree with a lot of what JD's saying as far as reading more of it would better situate you in a world that's pretty abstract overall, because it's a lot of disparate stories to start that slowly kind of bleed together like a good novel or what have you. I also agree it would make a good video game. In fact, I think it was a little short-lived video game that did not do very well. I think it would be a better TV series. For me, I would say if we're just rating this first trade, I would probably give this first trade an 8.5 because I think they're still finding their voices. And as they get further along, I mean, there's several that I would give 10-0s to that I just think are phenomenal top to bottom. CG spent 10.
Bob's always killing it on the
So for me, like this one is one of the first. It's kind of like Fables was the same way, where I didn't like the first trade as much as I liked the later ones as it started to really find its footing. It's another great Vertigo series. So yeah, I would probably give this one an 8.5. I think it sets up the basic conceit of the series and lays some subtle groundwork. And for me, it introduces one of my favorite characters, which is Dizzy Cordova. I think she's just freaking a boss.
Nice. So, yeah, I mean, before I give my score, I definitely want to influence anyone out there because there's a lot of buzz in the chat right now, in my opinion, especially for our little show here on Monday nights. There's definitely a lot of decisiveness. People saying they agree with Drew or have read this and haven't liked it. On the flip side, you guys got like JD in there saying you got to give it 24 issues and it's excellent. And then Gore Vidal just stopped by.
To need, man.
Disappointed. Drew didn't like 100 Bullets as an excellent series. Azarello did a good job and Rizzo did a better one. Rizzo's art resembles Sampayu's Alack Center. I definitely have not read that. Yeah, he says it's an Argentinian noir book, but yeah, Gore Vidal, man.
Gore is one of the opinions in this chat that I consistently respect. I'm sorry you feel that way, but stop having expectations for me liking things. Just do that for yourself now. And you know what? And I get that people dig this. I just feel like I have so many solid reasons for not liking it. It could have been the mood I was in when I read it. It could have been the fact that I had a fantastic new read here in the oversized editions of X-Men Grand Design, and I had to read 100 Bullets instead. Like that might have had an effect on me. But don't tie your enjoyment of the show to whether or not you agree with me. That you're going to be very disappointed.
Not what I was gonna say though is if you guys haven't read it yet and this crazy discussion has influenced you to go out and read it, definitely come back to this video once it's uploaded. Give your thoughts because I'm really curious to see what everybody in the chat's thought about this. For me personally, though, I think I'm gonna go between John and Andy's score base. I'm gonna give it an 8.0 basically. I think, like I said, it took me 2 sittings to get through 5 issues basically.
That's
the pacing
telling.
kind of interesting than the fact that the Dizzy story gets 3 issues and the following story gets 2 issues, but it presents enough questions and intrigue to me that I do want to read the next volume and maybe the next, depending on how that one goes. I really want to see where they're going with Agent Graves. It may just that forward by Steranko makes me want to keep reading a bit more, where he's just like, this isn't a story of good people. These are all bad people. So it's like, why would you want to read a story for 100 issues that's all about terrible people? But then I think of stories like basically Game of Thrones. All those people are scumbags too. And there's been Mad Men kind of the same way. I watched that show all the way through. Most of those people in that show.
Can we get a Mad Men comic book? I would read that all day.
That would be awesome. So I'm kind of curious to see, what happens in the next few volumes, especially here in, John and then JD in the chat as well, and even Gore Vidal, of course, talking about their comments of I'm just curious to see what happens next, basically. And you were talking about unpredictability earlier, so I think I am going to keep going with a little bit of this, but there's so many books that are on that list as well. Like we're going to do Turtles at some point. I know, John, we've talked about Fables. I still need to read the next volume of that as well. So, but yeah, a very interesting conversation on 100 Bullets. So yeah,
the conversations just energized you from when we started the show.
Oh my God, yeah. Like I said, life was sucked away for. I don't know what happened. I think it's just real world stuff, but yeah, it's just there was no energy. But Drew got me fired up, and then John came in like a hero to save the day.
And I will say, you mentioned Mad Men and Game of Thrones. There's a lot of books, movies, TV series I can't stand because I feel like all the characters are despicable and all of them. Cormac McCarthy, I'm ready to wipe away all of Cormac McCarthy off the face of the earth. I don't need any more Cormac McCarthy in my life. Everything is just depressing and let me want to kill myself. But 100 Bullets for me is noir, and it feels almost like fantasy. And what I like about it is that there are good characters struggling and failing usually. I can separate myself a little bit from that versus Cormac McCarthy, where I'm just I'll pass. So I understand that both sides.
I think Bub. I'm sorry. I gotta go back to Bub's.
Bub is hilarious. Yeah, Bub's on fire.
Let's review Return of Wolverine. Get Drew laid first. He'll give it a 10, man.
Sweet Jesus. Look, let's just talk about that for a quick second, okay? I haven't been laid in quite some time, and I'm here to tell you that the Return of Wolverine was fucking 10 times better than this book, 100 Bullets. What the fuck? I'll take Hot Claws all day over Shadow People. If the Shadow People were some sort of episode of Doctor Who, maybe that would have made sense, but this fucking shit, oh my God.
Yeah, everyone's trying to click at the same time. I don't know where that gift came from, but
I made that for you today because I thought it'd cheer you up. Well, I didn't make it. I found it online, uploaded it. Sorry.
Take credit for it, Andy.
No, Chris Barrett. I've seen The Road. I've seen No Country for Old Men. I've seen all the pretty horses, and none of those horses are pretty. This whole thing, it's just all a disaster.
So yeah. Anyway, 53 minutes in. Our other topic for tonight, we're just going to talk about the origins and just everything Vertigo. So John, you're more than welcome to stay, but I understand.
Yeah, I would love Vertigo.
Going on. But yeah, we're going to dive into the history of Vertigo here, and we're going to go. Basically, I'll just go ahead and put the link in the chat as well to the CBR. It's probably going to be a long, overblown article link here, but I'm going to go ahead and post it anyway. I found the top 10 list from CBR. They published it last year. So I figure instead of having to individually go through all the reads, we're just going to visit that list to see if we agree or disagree with some of the rankings on there. But first, I want to talk about the origins of Vertigo and just the importance of Karen Berger as an editor in this. I actually got a chance to watch a Sci-Fi Wire interview with Karen Berger today, where she talks about, how Vertigo came about. There was this big British invasion in the 80s. She gets a lot of credit for, which she actually even kind of holds up the interviewers, like gives Paul Levitz a lot of love for bringing those guys in. And eventually she was just kind of like that liaison between DC and the British people to bring their work and more or less make it Vertigo Comics eventually. So the origins of it come from Grant Morrison's Animal Man, where they brought in Grant Morrison to the States. And of course, Brian Boland and his work in covers. And then of course, his work in Killing Joke as well. Can't be understated, of course. And then just everything Alan Moore. She was like, her first big break was being an editor on the Saga of Swamp Thing, which she basically even said in the interview, she's like, look, I didn't have to do much. It was freaking Alan Moore. So what have you guys heard about Karen Berger? John, what is your like experience on early Vertigo and the origins of that?
I will say, like, I feel like Vertigo had like generations. Like there was generation 1 was this, Swamp Thing, Sandman world that people really fell for. I definitely came after that, and I've never read Sandman, never read it. I read some of the miniseries like Death, The High Cost of Living. I've read that. We did that for book club once. I've never read Swamp Thing, so I've missed out on that whole thing. I came in generation 2 and I read a ton of the stuff that I think she was helping to manage. I've read some Transmetropolitan. Why the Last Man is still, I think, probably the best thing that I think came out of the Vertigo for me. But yeah, 100 Bullets. And what I think was, at the time, it seemed like they just really knew how to find talented people with original voices. I'm not going to say that it wasn't an HBO thing in the sense that like you could tell they had a brand and they needed like, okay, we got to put some titties in here somewhere. We got to put some swear words in here. We got to have something violent happen on page 7. Like they had a little bit of that, like stay on brand kind of a thing. But I also feel like each book had a voice, right? Like you read Why the Last Man, or you read Fables, or you read Transmetropolitan, and you don't mistake them for one another. It's not like you're reading a Marvel or a DC where it's like all the universe has to have kind of a common language. They were free to really be unique. And that's kind of what I liked about it. So my LCS, when I came back into collecting, I was like, hey, I haven't collected in a while. I'm reading some Jim Lee over here on DC now. What's out? And they gave me all the trades: Transmetropolitan, 100 Bullets, Why the Last Man, Fables. They were like, here, try all of these. And I ended up reading them for their entire runs. I liked all of them that much.
Nice. What about you, Andy? I know you're like on some of your other review shows, you're starting to get into the Sandman stuff and all of that. What are some of your impressions on early Vertigo?
So I have no history with Vertigo. And that's because whenever I walked into a shop as a kid, the Vertigo titles were always mixed in or next to DC on the shelf. And I didn't buy anything DC as a kid. I had no draw to it. I had no history to it, which is weird because my first introduction to comic books were all the DC war stories out of the 70s out of my uncle's collection when I was getting babysat by them. But I was Marvel through and through to the point where Image came out and the Image hit me. So I missed Vertigo through and through. And that's a shame because when you look at the Vertigo's, the list on CBR and you talk about Vertigo books, Scalped, Preacher, Transmetropolitan, there's a giant chunk of these books that are constantly on the top 100 trades to read of all time, all the time. So I missed out massively when these books were first coming out. Scalped, Carolina Chris 26, an awesome community member who was a good friend of mine, preaches Scalped. And that's another one that I want to get on the list and get that one read at some point, whether it be Modern Men or whether it be another show. That'd be great. Scalp's on that list to read. Preacher is something. Preacher's probably Sandman's probably my first real big heavy dive into a Vertigo series book, and we've been doing that between Mike from Downright Nerdy Podcast and Jackson from Bored and Annoyed Podcast. The show kind of bounces between Mike's channel and Jackson's channel. But holy writing, you want to talk about painting a world. You want to talk about something that is very, my comprehension ability or my ability to read and comprehend and understand a book is nowhere near good enough to understand Sandman without reading it 3 or 4 times and then having Gore Vidal back us up. If you look, we just did Sandman Volume 5 Sunday night. Today's Monday. Yeah, last night on Board the Noid's channel. And Gore Vidal posted 3 or 4 extremely long comments helping to support us in understanding that because we read it too fast. But at the end of the day, I don't have the history that I wish I had with Vertigo. And what's funny is like this was DC's attempt to produce indie titles. I don't know. But did they lose out? Did Vertigo really lose out in the end because of Image and because of other indie publishers where the writers that had some of these amazing ideas didn't bring them to DC? Or I don't know. I don't know how Vertigo ended or how that situation played out, but I feel like the comic book community and the industry as a whole is lesser because Vertigo's not around.
Yeah, sure. Like anytime you take a way of communication or storytelling away, then we're all lesser for it, in my opinion. So, Drew, you want to answer the first question about what is
I'm not a big Vertigo guy. I'm not a big Vertigo guy, but like I'll say that Vertigo is definitely DC's attempt at courting that independent audience. It's their ability to see, and rightfully so, that alternative comics were a growing market. And tapping into that. And I think Karen Berger is a huge part of that. She was she had an eye for talent and basically knew how to get these creators in the position to produce books that had their own voice, that were powerful and strong enough creators to play out their own vision, and gave them a bit of a playground in which to do it. Just because it's not my thing doesn't mean that I can't appreciate that. There are definitely a number of Vertigo books that I very much enjoy. The first 2 volumes of Preacher, definitely worth checking out. Punk Rock Jesus was on the poll last week, and you all slept on that. That's your problem, not mine. I read it already. There are so many great things about Vertigo, and there are so many things that at the same time they don't really appeal to me. A lot of polishing their monocles and rolling up on their penny farthers. A lot of hipsterness in Vertigo fandom. Like if you ever met a fat girl with a Sandman t-shirt, she thinks she's deep because she reads Sandman. Like if you never met a dude who wears eyeliner unironically, he probably reads Vertigo books. So let that be what it is. There's a lot of that Vertigo shared universe stuff, that dark magical Justice League, Hellblazer and Swamp Thing, and none of that appeals to me at all. You guys all know that. So I'm going to go ahead and take a pass on that from Jump Street, but to ignore the impact that Vertigo had in basically, I think a lot of people went from Vertigo to creator-owned studios for the purpose of being able to do what they were doing at Vertigo and have a bigger slice of the pie financially. I think that would probably be my reasoning why Vertigo kind of stopped its heyday, is because you could go to Image and do the same things Vertigo was doing for you with the same ability to get into comic shops. That wasn't as much of a thing when Image was just, Rob Liefeld banging big toys together and Jim Lee making beautiful books that made no sense. Like, I think as Image evolved and became more of an opportunity, like there were more studios that were willing to take chances on art house stuff at Image eventually. And I think that as that kind of proliferated throughout the industry, Vertigo had less of a monopoly on that idea.
Yeah, and you and Andy talked about how Image has kind of taken that torch and ran with it now, where you do have these like independent and different style stories than your normal superheroes and capes. But in the interview I watched today with Sci-Fi Wire, they even talked about how more or less Vertigo created kind of that trade paperback format. They were kind of the first ones to start telling longer form stories in 5 or 6 issues, or maybe not the exact first, but they were the first ones to really popularize it after, Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns came out, and people like, I want to read that whole story at the same time. And I don't know if it was Karen Berger or one of the other writers under the umbrella, like Gaiman, was just like, yeah, let's start telling these longer form stories, and that's how we're going to format everything. And now here we are in the year 2020, and pretty much DC, Marvel, you name it, they're telling everything everything out there is pretty much created for like a 4 to 6 issue arc rather than just single issues now. So Image is, I feel like, taking the torch that Vertigo started in their storytelling, especially around the time this came out in the early 2000s. That's when I remember seeing that big turn from Image where they stopped trying to be like X-Men style books like Youngblood and Wildcats, and then they started being more like, you know, the sagas and such that we get today. So let's go ahead and transition into this list here. And I know we're running long on time, so I'm going to blow through these real quick. And you guys, you can, you know, give any reactions you want to on these. But on the CBR list, which I put the link in the chat, I guess I could drop it one more time since there's been some discussion. But anyway, number 10, these are the top 10 reads of Vertigo according to CBR, and number 10 is Scalped from Jason Aaron. Andy, you said you were definitely thinking about reading that one.
Oh, yeah, Carolina Chris 26 talks about this pretty regularly, and so do some other community members. And that story is pretty slept on, is from my understanding, and that needs to hit a Modern Men pull at some time.
If you're a fan of like what is it? Image has Southern Bastards, which I think is a great read. I feel like Scalped and Southern Bastards are like two sides of the same coin. Really, really great in putting you in a universe, a place that seems really authentic with authentic people in those places, and just powerful drama. So yeah, I recommend it for sure. Jason Aaron. I mean, it's freaking Jason Aaron. What do you want?
I think both Scalped and Southern Bastards have this air of authenticity to them that I was kind of lacking from the story we read tonight. I think that Scalped culturally has a lot of really cool stuff going on in it.
Oh, totally.
And then the next one, number 9 on the list, which it's kind of tough. I guess it deserves to be on the list because it pretty much helped Vertigo get to where it needed to be, and that's Sago Swamp Thing. I haven't read, obviously, the entire run of Sago Swamp Thing, but those early Alan Moore issues are amazing. Just issue 21 in itself, which I think is technically the second issue of Swamp Thing Alan Moore did. It's one of the best single issue reads of anything I've ever read. So that's where you kind of get the twist with Alec Holland and Swamp Thing, and you know what Swamp Thing actually is, and all that good stuff. So I definitely, I probably read about 12 to 20 issues of that. It's a phenomenal run. I still need to finish it though. Drew, go ahead.
I haven't started it, so you're ahead of me.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, if you do a reread or a read of that, I would be happy to reread that for sure. Drew, Hellblazer's at number 8. What do you think of John Constantine?
You can throw away this list right now. John Constantine is the most worthless character in the history of comic books, in the history of fiction even. Let's give him another TV show so it can be canceled. Let's put him on another TV show as a guest star so it can be canceled. Let's give him another book so it can be canceled. People like to tell you they like fucking Constantine so they can seem like they're hipster and cool. Guess what? You're not hipster and cool. You're just a tool. Go ahead and polish your monocle. Fuck out of here.
God, Drew has so much hate,
dude.
Man.
Like, here's the thing: is I've never read Hellblazer, right? I've never read Constantine.
Yeah, what the hell are you talking for?
I just know that every time I open up a DC book, like if I'm reading Teen Titans, right, or if I'm reading Shazam, or if I'm reading Wonder Twins, or if I'm reading Jimmy Olsen, or if I'm reading Lois Lane, I don't care what DC book it is. I know the second that Constantine shows up, I can close it and put it away.
Ooh, I disagree.
Comics, he says. I think Drew is a hipster. He just can't see it.
Oh my God.
Go ahead, Andy.
My love for Constantine is kind of fleeting a little bit. Like I enjoyed Keanu Reeves' take on Constantine in the movie quite a bit, but then when they take him and go really British like with him, I kind of don't like that as much.
He's a twat.
Hellblazer I have not read. From what I'm hearing, I think I'd enjoy it. But like I'd like Constantine in Sandman. Constantine showing up in Sandman was great. I really enjoyed that aspect of Constantine.
I have not read a ton of Hellblazer. I've got a few of the trades and I've read a few of the like key storylines from them. I have not read like one of them cover to cover because they're usually really, really enormous. I will say Constantine's like, I don't know, cayenne pepper. At some point it's too much. I get it. Like I don't need a ton, but I really loved him in the latest issue of Deceased. I like him when he shows up in those Black Labels as like a side character. Like, I don't need him as the lead, so that's why I've never dived in full bore. But I think he's very entertaining, and he definitely is a different note than most of DC's universe. So it's kind of like having that person who can come in and say the thing that nobody else on the Justice League is going to say out loud. So I kind of like him for that reason. I'll tell you.
The fact that Superman hasn't punched his head off for saying something that's stupid when he opens his stupid twat mouth.
Well, don't worry. I'm sure Tom Taylor will write that into DC's because he's such a crap
I'm
writer.
dropping DC's because it's a Constantine book now.
What I liked about the new issue of DC's was they put Jonathan Kent off to the side and gave guys like Constantine a little bit of a starring role. And I think it proved that character can work.
I think it proved that book is
Zombie
droppable.
Plastic Man, the best thing.
I could have told you that like a year ago.
We got the Comic G-Spot, Robert Galvin in the chat. What is going on, Mr. Galvin? How you doing? Chaos and Comics says, well, I agree with Drew is with he shows up as the same shtick. He is far better as the lead. Gore Vidal, man, well, this guy, if this guy speaks in the chat, you guys got to read it. He says Swamp Thing came out in '83 pre-Vertigo. Gaiman read it and asked himself, you could do that in comics? So he left journalism and decided he could read comics. So that is a cool story right there. Next one on the list, and it's
wait. Let's Gore Vidal says something else here that
go ahead.
Hey man, I haven't read Hellblazer, so let's just go ahead and concede that it's great, right? Anything that comes afterwards are caricatures. He even dislikes the character. I agree. Like, if Gore dislikes the character, there's got to be a point there.
My favorite part of the night though is Drew going like, "This character is horrible. The whole thing's awful." I've never read any of his solo stuff, but I
didn't read his solo stuff. But every time he shows up in anything, I'm like, what the? Why would anybody take the time to listen to this twat? He's like Pete Wisdom without the charisma. Like,
I swear you took the words right out of my mouth. Why would somebody listen to this twat?
I feel like we're one insane Drew comment away from just breaking John at this point completely.
Well, we'll get there.
You're loving this. This is amazing.
It's like 7 more on this list, right?
Yes. I want to keep going with the list. Next one is Transmetropolitan, Warren Ellis. So
I haven't read it. It's sitting on my shelf. I'm waiting for it.
Say what you will about Warren Ellis. A lot of crazy things have came out about Warren Ellis as of late. And reading the first couple volumes of Transmetropolitan, I think you can kind of see some of that on the page. At the same time, I really actually did enjoy my reading of Transmetropolitan. Just this insane, crazy journalist and this super insane future. My favorite highlight from Transmetropolitan is where Spider Jerusalem is your main character. His ex-wife comes out of a cryogenic freeze. She's cryogenically frozen, and she is upset that she is taken out because she didn't want to be thawed out until Spider Jerusalem was dead. She hated her ex-husband that much. So just have you guys had a chance to read this yet?
It's sitting on my shelf ready to go because 1 week it was on the Modern Men list and it was a sure in to win. It was a sure bet. And then everybody came through and pushed it into the losing pile. So it's on my shelf ready to go.
About 2 weeks later, after that happened, I saw it on the discount pre-owned trade shelf in my shop, and I picked up that first giant trade. It is huge for I think it was like $3-4. So
nice.
Yeah, I'm ready to rock on that whenever you guys want to do Transmetropolitan.
So I've read the first 2 trades, and it is dark and it is kooky, off the wall, future dystopia kind of stuff. I will also say, like, there's clearly like some psychic predictive kind of stuff he does about social media and government keeping secrets, and like there's definitely the first storyline had to do with the government making protesters look like they were violent when they weren't, so that they could send troops in to wipe them out, the dissenters. That is literally the first storyline.
I forgot about that. You're absolutely right. That's crazy stuff, man.
That is legit the first storyline, like the first 3 issues or 4 issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I'm not claiming that ever happened, but I'm saying that's what the story's about.
But John, I'm giving you a lead on this next one. It's Fables at number 6.
What is it?
Fables.
Oh yeah. I mean, Fables is probably the longest running Vertigo that I stuck with, because I mean it's like 22 trades plus a couple of hardcovers, and that's just the main story.
Wow.
There's also they did Jack of Fables, which is like a side story, which was garbage. I didn't really care for it. But for me, it's what an amazing universe. I know I've done a couple of shows talking about it, and I know the first few trades are usually, for me at least, and others, the hardest to get through. But I find the universe itself very interesting, and that's what's made me stick with it. And I was glad because each trade got better, and eventually it just became one of the best things that I was reading. And I dug the artistic style, which evolved because the artist at the beginning was not the one that came on and did it for the large majority of the run. I know that it sounds like kid stuff when everybody's like, oh, it's like fairy tales, and it's like it's like HBO did Once Upon a Time. Like it's definitely got all the boobs and the blood and the swearing that you want.
Now, Andy, have you had a chance to read Fables yet?
I have not. That's got to go on some of our lists now.
See, I think for our next poll, we just need to go back to this, and then Drew can veto whatever he doesn't like, and then we'll move on from there.
I think Drew's going to say, is it Vertigo?
That's not true. I very much enjoyed Fables. I read the first trade. I thought that the concept was much better than the execution, but a lot of people have told me that Fables gets better as you explore more of the world. So I'm definitely willing to read more Fables. I played that Telltale game, The Wolf Among Us. That was fun. Telltale had a good video game on it. I thought that was fun, but I like those Telltale games. And I thought that the world was fun world to explore. I thought the art at the beginning was good. You told me it changes, so maybe I've got a different opinion on it. But I thought it was great. I will go back and read more Fables.
Nice. Number 5. I'm kind of surprised this one was ranked a little behind. I'm not saying it's a bad story or anything. I just think some of the other things we mentioned are a bit more memorable, especially Fables being at 6. I feel like Fables, by technicality, in my opinion, should be considered the most successful Vertigo title because it had that long run. I think it's like 130 some issues plus the story that John mentioned. Plus, wasn't Ferris out of that as well, basically? So there's 2 spin-off series plus a long-running over 100 issue series. I'm surprised that wasn't much higher on this list, but they put the Invisibles by Grant Morrison at number 5, which from what I read, it was a decent story, but I need to reread it because it's not one of the most memorable Grant Morrison stories for me. I'm actually having to read the description to kind of remember a little bit about it. I just remember, it had that Morrison style weirdness to it. And they were basically, trying to save the world from the Mayan apocalypse date of December 22nd, 2012, which still trying to.
Is that that movie 2012 was based off of?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Well, not the book, but the Mayan apocalypse. But anyway, did anyone actually get a chance to read Invisibles?
Never even heard of it until you brought this list up, man. Which is surprising. It's a Grant Morrison read, and I've never even heard of it. And you said it wasn't very memorable, right?
Yeah, exactly. For some reason, it's like even when I'm talking the best of Morrison, I don't think Invisibles. But like I said, when I read it, I'm like, this is a pretty decent story. But maybe I just kind of 100 bullets. I just need to read a little bit more, then maybe it'll start to stick in my head a little bit. John, did you get a chance to read this one yet?
I missed that one. I will say I haven't read a ton of Grant Morrison. I read his Superman, and I'm trying to remember what else beyond that. I haven't read a ton of Morrison stuff.
We at least got to get you on that new X-Men at some point. Maybe you and Drew can read new X-Men and then agree and like something.
I've got the Omni over here. We can read that whenever you want. I think with Morrison, you run the risk because he's got 2 modes, and that is mind-blowingly awesome and mind-numbingly fucking up its own ass. And there's those are the only 2 Morrison things you get. Nothing's ever gray with me on Grant Morrison. I'm either like, this is great, or the fuck is he talking about? It's one or the other, and that's just kind of the way the guy goes.
So descriptive,
isn't it? Though I think I read a couple of his issues of Green Lantern that I was like, that's good. I didn't love it, but
the new stuff,
yeah. There was one
Legend.
issue that was
Legend loves that stuff. Won't stop talking about it. I did not enjoy.
There was one issue where it was like all inside of the ring, and like it was like almost like written like prose, and that issue was incredible.
Yeah, he finds a way of really opening your mind and making you kind of see things from a different angle. But sometimes that attempt falls on its face, and you're just like, "What is this dude talking about?"
You know what's crazy about that Green Lantern issue is I still need to watch this episode of Doctor Who. There's basically an episode of Doctor Who that was just like that, where the Matt Smith Doctor goes inside the TARDIS and then he actually gets to spend time with the actual, like, it's like a person representation of the TARDIS, kind of like Hal Jordan spending time with a person representation of the Ring. But that story was written by Neil Gaiman in Doctor Who. So kind of an interesting way how comics and, other things come full circle. So I always just, when I heard about that other story, I'm like, that's this kind of the same thing. Number 4 on the list is 100 Bullets, which we've covered more than enough tonight.
Number 4?
Yeah, number 4. Number 3.
What a turd to drop on those other books.
Number 3 is Preacher. So we've all kind of talked about how we need to read that or loved it. Number 2, I think we all know how much I love this one. Why the Last Man? We've talked about that before on this channel as well. And, the three of us have talked about it. But, John, I'll let you give your quick spin on Why the Last Man.
Well, I will say I'm not a big Preacher fan. I've read only the first volume, and it just didn't click with me. It was just a little too, I don't know, something about it I just didn't really care for. But Why the Last Man for me, I think it's probably my favorite Vertigo read. I think it's just it sustains really well. Characters that you care a ton about and are really interesting and evolve nicely over the run. They don't stay the same stoic kind of thing. Great mystery that's like slowly revealed. So I really, really think it's superior Vertigo.
Absolutely. And I'm right there with you, John. I think it's my favorite Vertigo as well that I've read. I've read their main run through twice at this point. We visited on the show. We had a whole show dedicated to it on the Comic Core at one point, hosted by Alec from Whitewell Comics.
That show got canceled, didn't it?
As well. Now they made it all the way through the run. It just ended where the book ended, Drew. But number 1 on this list, of course, has to go to Sandman. What I think Vertigo, I think the first image that does pop into my mind is Neil Gaiman's Sandman, though, at the end of the day. So, Andy, you want to talk about the importance of Sandman being at number 1 on this list?
It's more important than I can comprehend when we're reading this. All too often, I think I'm 5 volumes into Sandman, and I've had to read each one of them 3 or 4 times. Not because Gaiman is inept at delivering a story, it's because I'm inept at understanding what he's attempting to deliver. Long gone are the days of me being able to read a story in high school or at college level and really understand what that writer's trying to deliver. And I'm that old crotchety guy that just wants to go to work and wants to be entertained at the end of the day. And I've forgotten the ability. I've lost that ability to read an incredibly well-written story and understand it on the first read. There's so many layers to Sandman that every time I reread it, it's delivering something that I missed. And I'm on 5 rereads of the first 5 volumes, and it's continuously delivering. And Gore Vidal can speak. He can be the first person to stand up and speak about. He's been there for every read that we've done on all of the volumes, and how we've tried to basically learn to become better readers from our aspect, because Gaiman delivers phenomenally here, so well that some of us have really lost our ability to read and comprehend and understand what he's trying to do here. So we're trying to bring ourselves up to this level of understanding that we were at and we had forgotten. And Sandman does not get enough credit or enough spotlight, in my opinion, in the comic book community, in the world of comic books. And when you look at the top 100 reads, Sandman often doesn't hit as high on the list as like Transmetropolitan and Watchmen and some other things. And Sandman should be in the top 10 every time, in my opinion.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I think the importance of Sandman as a whole is always kind of underrated. That's because my experience with Sandman, my first experience with Vertigo, I didn't really talk about previously, was me and my brother. We primarily collected Superman when we were kids. That's how we started. We collected Superman. I remember, like, my sister was moving to college, and we wanted to look at this comic shop where she was going to college because she was a few hours away, and we didn't get a chance to visit too many comic shops because there weren't too many comic shops here in Indiana. So when we went to that, he came out with this book called Sandman, and it was issue number 69, and that's where they kill off the main character. So at the time, I had never fathomed a book like this at all. So, hey, come on. You had like 25 years.
Yeah, spoiler alert. This book came out in the 70s. What? No.
That's Darth Vader is Luke's father. Anyway.
What?
But anyway, yeah, it's just like that was a heck of a way to like start a Vertigo title. It was just like I had no idea what was going on, but I'd never seen anything like this book at all. It just throughout the years, I was always collecting more superhero books until I stopped collecting in the late 90s. And when I came back, I'm just like, I got to look for that Sandman book because that was, it always just stuck with me for whatever reason after reading that single issue. And I think that was really the turning point where it really did open up what comics could be. So I definitely think it deserves to be number one on any type of list like this. So Vertigo, unfortunately, DC decided to more or less close the doors of Vertigo. Seems like nowadays the main thing they want to do, they just decide to streamline it toward like you have DC Comics, you have Wonder Comics, and then you have the Black Label Comics. And yet somehow there's like a splinter universe where there's Sandman universe comics still, even though they said they're going to do 3 universes.
They're all canceled though, aren't they?
Probably. But yeah, it seems like
are.
DC is unfortunately just in this flux state right now where, you know, Drew, he'll talk your ear off about it all day, but just the long and short of it is just there's a lot of editorial changes. There's a lot of big business changes going on within, you know, DC and Time Warner and all that stuff. And unfortunately, Vertigo has been one of those casualties where they're just kind of changing the brand so much that unfortunately Vertigo didn't have a place in their brand currently. So Karen Berger luckily has moved on to Dark Horse. Chaos and Comics is talking quite a bit about the Berger books, how they're severely underrated. And yeah, I don't know. I haven't even heard enough about them to know what to go read. So I'm gonna have to go, I think, Chaos and Comics channel and figure out.
The Seed is the only one that I read that's a Berger book.
I haven't even heard of that one, so I'm kind of behind on what I need to be visiting over there at Dark Horse and Berger Books. And I know Dark Horse, they're not in the greatest state right now either, so hopefully they get their big break soon, and you know Karen Berger gets the credit she deserves on that. So
I mean, if you keep grabbing the previews magazine every time it comes out, Dark Horse has more stuff coming out. They're swinging.
And then Gore Vidal says Sandman-like saga brought in many new readers, especially women readers. So that's awesome. That to grow the fan base in any way, shape, or form is definitely essential at this point. So
man, I can't believe Punk Rock Jesus was snubbed on this list.
Yeah, we'll get.
Have you guys read that?
I have a hardcover, but it's one of the.
Oh man, crack it open. You talk about great concept, fantastic art. You got Sean Gordon Murphy doing the writing duties and the art duties in his own book. That is just absolutely phenomenal. It's blasphemous and violent and punk rock all at the same time. And man, I can't. I'm just like, we got to read Shirtless Bear Fighter, which is great. Like, look, it lost the last poll, and I'm a little bit salty about it because it lost the last poll to Shirtless Bear Fighter. And when we were talking about what topic we were going to talk about tonight, we were like, oh, we'll go back to the movies because that's what we do every time we want to kill some time as we talk comic book movies. But I think we need to save that for next week because Shirtless Bear Fighter, as good as it is going to take us like 15 minutes to be like, yeah, it was goofy. It was fun. We liked it. The art was cartoony and fun. There's nothing to hate about it.
I think it'll be a nice palate cleanser after the super serious, gritty read. We're going to read this over-the-top, comical, stupid-minded book, and it's going to be enjoyable in its own right.
Yeah, I just think we could have had a much deeper conversation about something else, but Shirtless Bear Fighter is like, honestly, tune in next week if you want to hear me like love something and be like, yeah, that was good. Tune in for that.
I am the Shirtless Bear Fighter.
Yeah,
you're a bear, all right, Chief.
Let me transform.
A grr.
All right, guys. That pretty much concludes our topic for tonight. We do have a new poll up for week 49. So go to the Comic Core homepage on YouTube. Look at that community tab. We got 5 choices that, you know, and if you have any choices you want to recommend, put them in the comments after this video uploads. Hit us up on the Discord server. I would love your guys' stuff because we're always like, yeah, we should read this, we should read that, and then we forget to put it on a poll, or we put it on a poll and it loses severely somehow. So anyway, the choices for this week: The Boys by Garth Ennis. It just came back on Amazon Prime. So it was on my mind. I think that's probably going to be the shoe-in winner. I kind of hope it wins because I really need to read this one. So The Boys by Garth Ennis. I went and threw Batman, The Black Mirror by Scott Snyder on there because it's one we haven't read. And it's Scott Snyder's big break, basically, in my opinion. And it's just a good Dick Grayson's Batman read. Kick-Ass by Mark Millar. Ever since those movies came out and hit, it seems like the world has kind of forgot about Kick-Ass, even though it made a resurgence in Image. So I'm like, we'll throw that on there, see what happens. I still think it's a solid read, at least that first issue volume. Drew, you recommended Black Widow by Mark Waid.
Very much a fan of that story. I think Wade and Samney are a great creative team. And if you give them the opportunity to tell a self-contained story in a short format, that it's going to deliver visually. And that, I mean, when we spoke to Mark Waid in Baltimore, what it feels like forever ago, he mentioned that working with Chris Samney kind of just like lets Chris Samney do his own thing. Like they kind of work the old Marvel method where they break a story, Samney draws it out, and Wade's like, yeah, no, this is perfect. Let me throw a couple words on it. And I think visually that story really works in the spy genre. I'm a big fan of that creative team.
I definitely want to give a shout out in the chat before I give our last pick. We got Beyond the Blast Doors in the chat. What is going on, man? Definitely check out the stuff they did. And they had a 12-hour stream for charity. Definitely big ups to all the work they did on that stream over the weekend. They raised a lot of great money. So shout out to those guys. They had a great charity cause going on over there. So definitely check that out. And then the last pick, Preacher by Garth Ennis. Once again, it's one I have not read. And I think it's kind of the same vein as The Boys. It's just that see, I can't even. This Lion Den guy in the chat, he keeps distracting me. But anyway, Preacher by Garth Ennis. He gets 2 spots this week with that and The Boys. So, yeah, definitely don't forget to vote. We only had 28 votes last week. So, apparently the poll last week kind of just sucked. So, no one voted anyway. But, yeah, just go ahead, vote, leave your feedback. Or if you want something different, you could even leave comments in the poll saying you don't like any of those. You guys should read this and said, yeah, that's great. Let us know what you want us to read next. That would be appreciative.
Yeah. If your comment gets more thumbs up than any of the votes on the poll, your comment wins. That's how polls work. It's a write-in vote.
Yeah, you can always do a write-in vote. And if it doesn't win, then maybe next week wants to be compelled, like, hey, let's go ahead and put that on the normal poll for the following week.
Feel free to leave a suggestion in the comments and then campaign on all of your social media to get people to come leave you thumbs up because that just helps our engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're not doing a poll next week because week 50 is Crisis on Infinite Earths. Which,
I am 3/4 of the way through it.
Just like, John having his mind blown by Drew's comments tonight, I fully anticipate my head being blown by Drew's comments on Crisis. So at least stay tuned for week 50 to see Drew really make me angry on his comments on Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Stay tuned for week 51 where Seawood no longer hosts because he's a vegetable because of how many aneurysms I gave him.
I may be having to take 51 off after that insanity. But anyway.
He'll be back for the new 52, right?
Absolutely. We'll be back for week
Let's
50.
just do 52 weeks. We'll read 52 issues for week 52.
Yep. Hey, like I said, I'm saving.
Andy's looking right now, running over his schedule in his head. It's fucking hilarious.
Wild card saved for week 52.
I've got a wild card yet. Yeah.
So I'll announce that week 50 what that's going to be because we won't be doing a poll except for week 51. But anyway, shout out to Read or Die. He's accepting a challenge. We got Whack Comics in the chat, but we know where to find the chat. John,
Whack Comics came for the right episode.
Anytime. Big thanks for coming and saving the show tonight, John. John, where can people find you on social media, man?
John's Comics with Kids, man, on Instagram, YouTube, whatever. But here on Wednesday night for the greatest comic book show ever.
That's right. And another guy who's on that show, Andy, where can people find you?
Nowhere this week. I'm on vacation, so I'm going to hide in the hole and I'm going to read a giant box full of books. I'm going to read all the Why the Last Man we talked about. I'm going to read all the Turtles stuff. I'm going to read a ton of stuff I've been setting aside. But yeah, Comic Man Andy on Instagram, here on YouTube, on the greatest comic book show ever. Monday nights, Modern Men's. Andy Given Thursdays when I get back on the 17th is going to be a good time. Me and Ryan from Rhino's Comic Report on Facebook, we're going to put together a pretty interesting show with something kind of a hot take. So that's going to be pretty fun. And I'm thinking about doing a companion show to Andy Given Thursdays. I'm kind of thinking about doing an Andy Given Sundays. That's kind of a freestyle open invite hangout kind of thing. So we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Big shout out to Chad R in the chat, by the way. Chad doesn't get enough love. He is in the chat tonight as well. And then from what I'm going to understand, there was another show this Thursday. It was from this guy right over here, Drew.
We did this weird thing on the Comic Core, guys, where we talked about comics. Like, we talk about trades here, and that's great. Wednesday they bullshit about comics. Like, it's very, very loosely based on comics. Tuesday's about the golden age. So if you're like a rich old guy at talking comic, I guess that's fine. If you got like thousands of dollars to spend on some cowboy book, like, good for you. But man, I buy new comics every week, and we talked about new comics. We also talked about the state of the industry over the summer and kind of some of the really great things that are happening with the big two and some of the questionable things that are happening with the big two. I was joined by Jason, our good friend Comics Misexplained, and our buddy Gomer. And we had a really nice conversation for about an hour and a half. Go back and watch that rewind. And I'll be filling in on this Thursday, again, talking about new release comics. And we'll see if Jason's got time to join me, and maybe we'll find some other special guests along the way.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys had a great show the other day. I know, Legend was busting your balls, but I only talking Marvel. But
we talk DC for 45 straight minutes.
I still want to see that 4 or 5 hour. No, it was a 6-hour live stream with you and Jason just talking about House and Powers of X. I still challenge you to do that.
You know what? You threw that out in the chat, and Gomer was like, "I'm in for that too." So we are probably going to do that at some point.
You guys got that 8-hour cap, but I definitely think you can do it.
We're just going to talk Dawn of X.
You can find me if you look on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, cwoodard19 on all those platforms. You can also find me over on the Comics of the Atom podcast with my friend Mike. We're still reviewing the Ultimates. Hopefully we'll be recording that sometime this week. And then also on my channel in October, I'm going to be doing an October Reads feature. We're going to be talking a read every single day in October related to either just the Halloween or the fall season or spooky book, or probably going to delve into some House of Mysteries, House of Secrets. Andy wants me to read a Gideon Falls issue. So I'm going to read 31 issues in 31 days and just give my quick review on them every day. So yeah, can't wait for that. But big thanks to the chat. Big thanks for everyone for coming out tonight. Don't forget to go to theheroinitiative.org to see how you can help those creators in need. Until next time, guys, don't forget to set your alarms.